Hello everyone! Are you ready to start creating a few Christmas cards? Today I'm going to share a whimsical holiday design that you can create with a few stencils and dies. I can't wait to show you how this comes together. For today's project, I'll be using these two new stencil collections from This Calls for Confetti. The first layered set is called Pretty Petals. The floral and leaf designs are part of the new holiday collection, but images like this can be used all year round. It has two flowers, leaves, and some detailed images. This second collection is called Retro Stripes Add-on. In my previous video, I shared the Retro Stripes stencil collection, which was a wide stripe design and some shape window masks. This collection has been designed as an add-on to that layered stencil set. The stripes are thinner, and instead of window masks, these are the solid shape masks. This collection also includes some dies to cut out those shapes. As I create today's project, I'll bring in a few additional supplies. As always, I encourage you to use what you have, but if you would like a list of the items I'm using, I've provided you with that in the description below, along with a link to the This Calls for Confetti shop. Let's get started with the project. I'm going to start with the back floral panel for the card. I'm creating a faux shaker card, and this piece here is going to sit inside of an arched window. I'm using the stencil shape to mark the area where my window will sit, and then I'll bring in some blue inks to create a background. This is going to have a few wet mixed media layers, so I'm using a mixed media cardstock. I want this project to be simple, so I'm only using 2 shades of Distress Oxide ink. Of course, you are welcome to shade this using any mix of colors that you want. The flowers are going to be white, so just about any color would look great here. I want to add a little bit of texture to this background, so I'm going to spritz it with some water. This will need to dry a moment before I can add my texture paste. As a mixed media novice, I don't use too many layers on my card making projects. I prefer to keep it simple. For this design, I'm using white opaque paste, which will dry with a thick matte finish. It's difficult to see on camera, but I have placed that flower in the lower corner of that arch shape that I drew with a pencil. This will peek out from the corner of my card when I add the frame over the top. This flower design also has some detail pieces for the center of the flower and additional pieces for around the flower. Feel free to add those too if you wish. I'm also going to add a few of the leaf images to the background. Again, I'm just using a white paste to create the images. For those of you who love using mixed media, you could also bring in some of your favorite pastes and glazes. If you're one who struggles with mixed media like I do, or maybe it's just not your thing, you could use ink instead, or you could bring in some embossing powders. There are so many possibilities with this design. All right, I'm going to set this aside to dry and create the front panel for the card using the retro stripes. Red and blue is one of my favorite Christmas combinations, so I'm going to create a candy cane stripe with ink. I'm just going to line up this stencil with the base of the cardstock, and then I'm going to secure it in place. My glass board is magnetic, so I use peg magnets to hold the stencils. Even with those magnets, the cardstock can shift, so I like to tape it in place. I want to make sure that these lines are nice and clean, so I'm moving the blending brush in the same direction as the stripes. I'm also not heavy-handed when I blend. I find that I get less ink under the stencil if I add it in layers rather than adding a large amount of ink at once. I am going to need to add a stripe here at the base of the card, so I'm just going to line up the stencil with the other images, then I'll quickly blend some ink over the top. I'm going to bring in that arch-shaped mask and take a look at the pattern. I do like how this looks, but I think I might want to add a few more stripes. I want the second set of lines to be close to the previous set, so I'm going to line up the stencil with the top of the card and secure it in place. I did get a little lazy this time and only added ink to the sides of the cardstock. I really should have filled this in completely because I could have used that negative piece for another card. This is going to need another stripe across the top, so I'll readjust my stencil here and add it real quick. As I do, I would love it if you took a moment to tap the subscribe button or the thumbs up icon below. Actions like this help the channel grow. Now all I need to do is cut out my arch shape and make the frame for this shaker card. I'm using the die that came with the Retro Stripe add-on collection. This is going to sit right in the center of the cardstock, and I'm just going to secure it in place with a little bit of tape. I'm just going to run this through my Spellbinders machine and I'll have a frame panel for the shaker card. While I have the die cutting machine on my desk, I'm going to cut out the sentiment for the card using the Merry and Bright die set. My original thought was to cut the words merry and bright from red glitter and the ampersand from black cardstock. As I began to assemble the card, I realized that the black didn't work, so I ended up cutting the ampersand from red glitter also. I was happily surprised how well these dies cut through the glitter cardstock. I didn't have any issues with the tiny pieces. As I said, this is going to be a faux or fake shaker, which means that there will not be any acetate and the card will be thinner than your average shaker. I'm still going to pop up the frame and give it some dimension, just like a shaker card, but I'm only using a 2mm tape. This is going to make the card much easier to mail. Like a shaker, I'm adding the foam tape around the frame, and then I'll pop it in place over the top of the texture paste flowers. I'm going to adhere these layers to a black card base, and then I can add my sentiment and the shaker bits. The Merry and Bright die collection has a set of shadow layers, but because I was limited on space, I chose not to use them. This made lining up the letters a little tricky. I brought in a ruler to help me. I am using a liquid adhesive that sticks to texture paste. Not all adhesives will. You might want to test yours before you try to secure the sentiment in place. Now it's time to make this look like a shaker card. Instead of little pieces floating around inside the frame, we're going to glue these in place. I'm using the Bokeh Dazzle dots. These are flat, pearlescent circles in 4 different sizes. I started by laying them out on the background to create a nice balanced design. Then I brought in some clear liquid adhesive to stick them in place. To make it look more like a shaker, I tucked a few of these items under the frame. I'm going to finish adding these to the card, and then I'll share the completed design with you. How cute is this card? I love that bright mix of red and blue with a pop of black. I did add a little bit of ribbon at the base, and I love how it looks. This card design is super versatile and can be created using any of your favorite inks, pastes, and sentiments. I chose a holiday design for mine, but I think it would also look lovely as a fall card or with a winter sentiment. Let me know in the comments below how you plan to use this design. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope this project inspired you to try something new. If you have any questions about this project or supplies I used, feel free to post those in the comments below. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.